Hey there, my name's Porsha Lauri. Welcome to or welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so excited to say that the strike is officially over. Yes, I'm so excited. I don't know about you, but I was running real dry on content over here on the channel. I don't know that many other forms of pop culture, and movies and TV shows are pretty much my bread and butter. 2, I don't really want to do videos about music. In conclusion, I think that I will be returning to mostly movies and TV shows. I think from time to time, I may feel inclined to make some music themed videos, but I think for the most part, I'm really gonna focus on TV and movies. And I thought what better way to kind of kick off re-entering this era of my channel, but to bring back up my What Did We Learn series. A popular trope in the romance genre is fake dating. This cliche has sort of a wish fulfillment factor, with a typically quiet protagonist getting into a relationship with a typically cool or popular love interest. Movies like Just Go With It, Pretty Woman, and The Proposal have proven this genre, while a bit tired, to be extremely profitable. Today we look back at the 2018 Netflix smash book turn movie, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, and we ask, what did we learn? But before I get into today's video, as always, if you enjoy my opinions on all things movies and TV shows, be sure to do me a solid and drop a like on this video, then run over to that subscribe button, hit the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. And if you've been keeping up with me for a while, then you know that I also have a podcast. It's called The Cinema Sit Down. You can find all of the links to our Spotify and iTunes down in the description below. It's a whole lot of fun, and we'd love if you joined us. So first off, let's get into the synopsis. Laura Jean is an avid writer and reader, and mostly prefers to fantasize about what her life could be instead of living one. As a hopeless romantic who has never had a relationship, she takes her unbridled emotions and pours them into love letters that she has no intentions of ever sending. Aside from burying her nose into books, she spends her time hanging with her 2 sisters and her friend Christine, watching 80s teen classics and baking. When older sister Margot leaves to Ireland for college, Laura Jean is forced to venture out of her comfort zone, first with driving, a fear of hers, and second, creating friendships outside of her sisters. Younger sister Kitty is concerned that Laura Jean doesn't get out enough and needs a boyfriend, so she decides to take all of Laura Jean's letters and send them out secretly. This results in mayhem for Laura Jean, as one of the recipients also happens to be one of Margot's ex-boyfriends. To avoid all this drama, Laura Jean and another recipient, Peter, choose to fake date to keep the boys off of Laura Jean's back, and Peter so he can make his ex-girlfriend jealous. But of course, things don't go as planned when Laura Jean starts falling for Peter and Peter starts falling for Laura Jean, unbeknownst to each other. So before I start breaking down the movie, I just gotta give my 2 cents on the fake dating trope. I don't know why, but fake dating is just one of my top things that just frustrates me, because the moment it's introduced, I know how it's going to end, and it takes a lot of the fun out of the fake dating aspect, because I know that they're just gonna end up really dating by the end of it. But I like this movie. I like this movie a lot. So we start off the movie getting some narration from our main character, Laura Jean. And Laura Jean is like kind of your standard bookworm, romantic high school girl. She has a couple sisters, one older, one younger, and they live with their dad. We learned pretty quickly that Laura Jean's mother had passed away a few years ago, and so she lives with her now widowed father. Fun fact, part of the reason that I watched this movie the first time was solely because Aiden was in it. And like, I knew that like he was playing a dad, so like he was probably gonna be in like 0.2% of the movie, but that was enough pull for me. Now, as we get our introductions to the characters, it's very clear right at the beginning that Laura Jean and her sisters are all very close to each other. It seems like they spend a lot of time together. Her older sister seems to be her best friend, as well as her older sister's boyfriend. See that she is kind of secretly pining after Margot's boyfriend, Josh. Josh, I think it's Sanderson, and he also is their next door neighbor, so kind of like boy next door vibes. Like, there's a lot of cliches we're going to be touching on throughout this movie. I think she also makes it abundantly clear that she is a hopeless romantic, and the bulk of the books that she enjoys reading tend to be romance novels. However, Laura Jean is really quite afraid of commitment. She seems to be quite afraid to get too close to anyone. And so she never really ventures out of getting her nose out of the books. You know what I mean? Like truly playing up that like bookworm personality type. And she's really concerned because Margot is getting ready to leave for college. And of course she couldn't just like go to a local college. She's leaving the country. She's moving to Ireland for school, which means that Laura Jean is going to be super alone for the first time in probably her whole life. Now, before Margot ends up leaving, she actually ends up breaking things off with her boyfriend, Josh. This comes as a surprise to not only Laura Jean, but the entire family. They kind of set this precedence that Josh was, kind of had become a part of the family. They've been dating for a few years. He would be over at their house, like probably more often than not. But of course, this kind of leaves Laura Jean in a very weird position because, as I said before, Margot was her best friend, so she would spend a lot of time with her and Josh, I would assume, at school. And now this is leaving Laura Jean with kind of no one to look after her. So shortly thereafter this, we see that the family takes Margot off and she's gone for the foreseeable future. And Laura Jean is left to kind of pick up the pieces. We see Laura Jean go to school and we get a little bit of an understanding of like the social hierarchy, and Laura Jean's definitely nowhere on it. Like she kind of doesn't exist. In her eyes, she sees herself as kind of invisible and that no one actually notices her. Hold that in your pocket for later. This is also the first introduction to one of Laura Jean's sort of nemesises, and that character is Jen. Now, Jen is described as a previous friend of Laura Jean's, but something happened in their relationship and it's kind of been decided that Jen is like a cool, popular girl and Laura Jean is not, so they just slowly stopped being friends, stopped hanging out somewhere in junior high. So when we're introduced to Jen, we actually see Laura Jean was passing Josh in the hall and she felt kind of awkward, so she turned back to wave at him while simultaneously bumping into Jen as she's unnecessarily upset. And so she looks down and makes fun of Laura Jean's shoes. Combat boots have been popular since like 2012, so where are you coming from? Christine, Laura Jean's friend. This is our first introduction to her. Basically, in this movie, she just plays the role of the comedic relief best friend who says kind of out-of-pocket shit all the time. Walks up and she makes fun of Jen for wearing Uggs, which I would argue have been considered basic and uncool for quite a few years now. So like the dichotomy of this conversation is ridiculous. We also are introduced to Peter for the first time. Now Peter is dating Jen, and so he sees all of this commotion goes down. He doesn't really defend Jen or defend Laura Jean for that matter. He just kind of like scoops her up and they walk away. Now during some of these scenes, Laura Jean is talking about like kind of all the great loves that she's had so far in her very young life, all of which were one-sided, of course. And during this part where we meet Peter for the first time, we also find out that once upon a time, Laura Jean thought she was in love with him as well and had written him a love letter. Also, it's a running theme in the movie, so I feel like if I don't mention it, then some things that take place later might not make as much sense. But Laura Jean is supposed to be a terrible driver. Like, she's not confident in driving, and no one is confident being in the car with her. Now, my assumption is she has her license because we see her driving her little sister to school. So I assume that she has a license, but like, how did she get a license if she's so bad at driving? It doesn't matter. You see that Kitty is so terrified of Laura Jean's driving that she actually wears a helmet in the car. I think this is a really funny running gag. See on the first day when they're leaving school that Laura Jean almost runs over Peter in the parking lot because she doesn't check her mirrors. So yeah, just keep that running gag going on in the back of your head. Fast forward to that Friday night of that week, and Laura Jean and her sister Kitty are on the couch, but they're watching some silly rom-com, and Kitty mentions to Laura Jean, she's like, don't you think it's kind of weird that you're like 16 and you're home and it's Friday night? And Laura Jean's like, yeah, but I love spending time with you. This is one of my favorite things. And Kitty's like, that's great and everything, but like, I canceled plans to be here and like, you need to get a life. So Laura Jean kind of ponders what Kitty says, but she doesn't really do too much about it. Laura Jean actually falls asleep and Kitty notices. She goes into her room, goes into her closet, finds the fabric box that has all of the letters in it, and she decides to send them out. Diabolical or really sweet gesture? You decide. So Laura Jean has absolutely no idea what's happening. And also all of this was happening on like a Friday night. So a few days have gone by before she returns to school, which I actually think is like perfect because it's enough time for like the letters in theory to actually like get out and get into people's hands before Monday morning at school. Like in theory, maybe it could happen. So Laura Jean is just at school. She's minding her own business. She's running the track around gym with Christine when all of a sudden Peter keeps trying to flag down Laura Jean. So Christine excuses herself even though this is the middle of gym class. So like, why does she leave? Wouldn't she just go back with the rest of the class? And like, what are they doing? And why can Peter just run up to her? They're in class right now, right? I don't know what's going on. I don't understand high school. So Peter goes up to Laura Jean and he's like, you know, I really appreciate the sentiment. I think this is really sweet, but it's like never gonna happen. And she just looks at him quizzically like, what are you talking about? And Laura Jean kind of looks down at his hand and then she sees the envelope. She starts to kind of panic and she's like, what the hell is happening right now? Like, what are you talking about? And the next thing you know is she like looks over and Josh is now approaching her and he also has an envelope in his hand as well on the letter. And he looks just as confused as Peter looks. So in an effort to avoid how absolutely awkward and insane this moment could be when Josh tries to approach her as well, she grabs Peter and just starts kissing him. And I'm thinking she did this so that maybe Josh would be like, oh, this is like an intimate moment. I'm not gonna approach her right now. And Laura Jean gets up and literally runs away. Peter's looking at her and he's like so confused because he was literally trying to let her down and now she's like force kissing him. Later in the bathroom, she's also approached by another classmate. This classmate's name is Lucas. Lucas ends up, telling her that he got the letter and he kind of does the same thing as Peter, but he also says like, I just want you to know that like I had a great time that night as well. It was like, I think their backstory was like she fell in love with him at like her first school dance. But he ends up telling her like, I'm gay. And she's like, oh, well, that's totally cool, totally fine. Thank you for letting me know. So now Laura Jean knows that all of these letters have gone out and there's kind of nothing she can do. She has no idea why this happened or how. But just because Laura Jean gets home from school does not mean the awkwardness is over just yet. I forgot to mention this earlier. When Peter first approaches Laura Jean, he mentions how him and Jen just broke up and this is like really not the time. So also, him and Jen have just recently broken up, like over that weekend, I suppose. Later in the day, since Josh couldn't talk to Laura Jean at school, he decides to try to talk to her at her house. So he comes to the front door and asks for Laura Jean, and she's upstairs in her room, tells Kitty, who's like at the doorway, like, I was never here. She literally tumbles out of a second-story bedroom window, takes her bike, and rides off to the corner cafe. She aggressively orders like a cherry Coke, and just as she's about to kind of decompress and deal with the stress and anxiety of all these letters getting out, she looks over to her left and finds that Peter is also at this diner. He gets his chocolate milkshake and he asks Laura Jean like, so like, what's good? I was trying to let you down and then you stuck your tongue in my mouth. And so Laura Jean admits that she had written these love letters and they were supposed to stay secret. Somehow they got out, and that is the only reason that he received a letter. So by kind of exposing herself and the situation that happened, Peter decides he'll drop it and he won't bring it up again. But just before she's about to get out of there, he asks, hey, is that your bike on the side of the building? And she's like, yeah. And we don't see it, but it's understood that he gives her a lift back home. Once they're back at Laura Jean's house, this is where he comes up with the idea of fake dating. The intro. I like that they just get into it. Like, we don't really waste too much time before we get to this part of the movie, like, thank God. But Peter basically is like, if you want Sanderson to leave you alone and to just kind of wait for all of this to like get brushed under the rug, why don't you and I start fake dating? This would keep Josh away from you, and it'll help me to get Jen back because she's gonna be so wildly jealous. Laura Jean kind of says that she'll think about it, but for now she's really not interested, so she's just gonna kind of sleep on it and see how she feels. But the next day at school, Laura Jean does end up caving, and she decides, yeah, I'm gonna fake date Peter for now, just until all of this blows over. Has them sit down, and she's like, we have to form a contract. Like, we need rules to abide by. We can't just like fly by the seat of our pants. Peter is reluctant to this at first, but eventually he comes around. She mentions how she wants to implicate a no kissing rule, and he thinks it's silly because like, who's gonna buy that they're really dating if they can never be touching one another? And she just mentions how she's never been in a relationship and she doesn't want all of her firsts to be faked, which I think is actually a really sweet moment. It's like not something that's in most fake dating movies. Like, I can't think of another one where they have a set of rules quite like this. But now that no, that's not true. There's always a set of rules. There's always a set of rules, and one of the rules is almost always no kissing. So that way, when they inevitably do kiss, we have an excuse to see fireworks. So I take it back. Nothing about this is original. Like I said, I don't really know why I like this movie. I just do. Because she mentions no kissing, she says that Peter can put his hand in her back pocket, which leads to this running gag of her romance and movie references being that of an 80-year-old woman, which I think is a somewhat of a direct quote of what Peter says. Along with these rules, Peter also says that she has to go to all of his lacrosse games and parties with him. And lastly, Laura Jean says that Peter's gonna have to drive her and her little sister to school every day, which is one of like the cuter like things that they agree on doing, that I'm like, I don't know that you needed to do this to like really send home the message that you're fake dating, but I think it's a very cute little add-on. There's also another cute add-on with Peter saying that he could write Laura Jean love notes. It's something that Jen always had wished that he would do for her, and he never did, so he knows that if he does it for Laura Jean, that'll really, really make Jen jealous. And Laura Jean at first is like, oh, that's so cute, and then realizes like, oh yeah, duh, it's all a game. It's all a game for Jen's heart. And I don't know if it's because he's a jock, and like jocks just do that. When love interests call each other by their last names, there's just something so fucking cute about that, and I can't let it go. But this is like one of those romance movie tropes that totally gets me. It sells me every time. I love it. So after they shake and agree on their contract, the next day Peter does in fact pick up Kitty and Laura Jean from their house. Kitty's all excited to not have to get in a car with Laura Jean behind the wheel, and her and Peter kind of bond over Laura Jean's lack of driving ability. Peter and Kitty also have really great chemistry. Like, he's just so like sweet and nice to her. She comes in the car and she has like a little like yogurt smoothie thing, and so does Laura Jean, and he asks if he could have some, and she hands some over to him, and he's like, oh my god, these are so good. What do I have to do to get you to bring me one of those every single day? She's just like, oh, I like him. Like, she's completely like head over heels for him, just like Laura Jean is. But Laura Jean doesn't know that yet, remember? It makes the rounds throughout the entire school that Peter and Laura Jean are a thing. They are seen walking together in the halls. He puts his hand in her back pocket, and in the center of the cafeteria, he spins her around and hands her a little love note in front of everyone. And it's doing the job that they wanted it to do. It's creating a buzz around the campus, and Jen is definitely watching all of this, and she's definitely irritated about it. At some point too, with this cover of having Peter as like her love interest, she's able to kind of confront Josh about the letters a little bit, and basically says like, yeah, I'm with Peter now. And he's like, I don't know why you're with him. He's a douchebag, but okay. It's very clear that Josh does not like Laura Jean with Peter, and that he already had ulterior thoughts about Peter prior to them being together. But I also think that he actually really liked Laura Jean. Tell me in the comments, and if you've ever read the books, let me know, is Josh a more prevalent role in the books? Because to me, he's just kind of like there and he's there every once in a while, but I never at any point was thinking Team Josh or that she would ever be with him, mostly because like her relationship with her sister, like that just wouldn't match up with how close they are. So I'm like wondering if he was more prominent in the book and if there was more like flirtationship between them, because to me I just don't read that off of like Lana Candor and Israel Broussard. Shout out to the Josh character, Israel Broussard, by the way, because that man is the same guy that played Mark in The Bling Ring. So we see that first day at school of them kind of presenting their relationship to everyone. And then we also see them go to like what appears to be the first party together, and right before they're gonna walk in, gonna fix her ponytail, and he convinces her to take her hair down because he says she looks really pretty when her hair is down. And he takes a picture of her and he's like, see, I proved it. Also takes her phone and takes a picture of himself. We need to change our wallpapers to each other. Well, what about you? And he's like, girl, I already did it. And it's the picture that he had just taken of her. And they walk hand in hand to the party. I only really bring that part up, one, because it's so fucking cute. Like this movie can you tell? Like I'm here for all the lovey-dovey shit. She takes the scrunchie out and she says to him, it's my favorite scrunchie. And he's like wearing it on his wrist. So he's like, I got you. Nothing much really happens here. What we really understand is that Laura Jean is able to blend pretty seamlessly amongst Peter and his friends, even though she's an outsider. Later that night after the party, Laura Jean and Peter go back to that corner cafe place. And this is also the first time where we see a little bit of a more in-depth conversation between Laura Jean and Peter. Peter and Laura Jean have known each other for a long time. My understanding is that the more the sequels you see, the more they talk about what their friendship was like when they were kids. But my understanding is that for the most part, a lot of the main kids in this circle of friends or circle of people that Laura Jean knows kind of grew up together. But with that being said, that means that they know a little bit more about each other's lives than just like random classmates that happen to go to the same school. Peter's talking a little bit about the fact that his dad had left him and his family. And he brings this up because Laura Jean's mom had passed away. And he's like, I know that's not like the same thing, but I feel like we kind of, you know, we have an understanding about what it's like to have a missing parent. And Peter ends up kind of putting his guard back up, and he starts to open up, but then he's like, no, never mind, it's not a big deal. And Laura Jean responds by saying, we don't have to talk about it, but it's not whatever. And I thought that that was like a really cute, sweet line. These are the moments that start to make their real dating outcomes start to make a little bit more sense. I would say that's probably why the fake dating works for me in this scenario, because I feel like they actually give the characters a little bit of depth that allows my imagination to be like, okay, I guess I could see this actually happening. It flows very well, and I think that's why this story still works. Now, we start to see kind of months fly by of them being in this fake dating relationship. Eventually, both Laura Jean gets closer with Peter and his family, as well as Peter getting close with hers. They're really trying to sell this, which, to be fair, I know like a movie is gonna do this because it's a movie. Was it necessary for them to like involve their families at all? And Laura Jean also, like, to her credit, she does mention this in the narration of like, I kind of wish we never did that because it would be less blurring of the lines between what is real and what is fake. Now, everyone knows about this relationship in Laura Jean's life, with the exception of Margot. Unlike everybody else, Laura Jean cannot seem to be able to lie effectively to Margot. So instead of lying to her about what she's been doing, the letters getting out, the Josh thing of it all, she just decides to completely avoid Margot at all costs and to never bring up or tell her about her current dating life. We also during this time see that Peter and Laura Jean end up opening up to each other more and more about like their family lives. We really enjoyed these developments in their relationship, these small interactions, because they might seem short or small, but I feel like it actually sends the idea home that these two characters actually have a lot in common. Now, there was another stipulation within their contract for their fake dating relationship, and that was the annual ski trip. Now, the thing about this portion is that Laura Jean was like, well, that is 3 months away. Like, I don't know if we're still gonna be fake dating by then. So Peter adds a caveat: if they are still together in the 3 months from, when they had first made the contract, that Laura Jean would have to go with him on the annual ski trip. And this was super important. And it's also kind of known as being like a hookup spot for like, couples when they're in high school or whatever. And no girl would let her boyfriend go to this function alone. So it's really important that Laura Jean goes, since they are still presenting as together. With this date kind of looming, Laura Jean is starting to realize that she's also having feelings for Peter. So in an effort to not, get her heart broken potentially, she tries to end things with Peter prior to the ski trip. And when she brings this up to Peter, he's immediately like, no, like, what are you doing? Like, it's too close to the ski trip, like, you're not gonna get out of it this easy. She's like, I think we've sufficiently made Jen jealous. We've made everyone believe that we're in a relationship. Like, I think we can cut our losses now. She even says, like, me and Josh are good. So, like, I think, like, we can be done with this now. And he says, why are you like running away? Like, why are you so scared? She finally caves and she's like, fine, I will go on the ski trip if Christine goes. With Christine being her kind of avant-garde friend, she doesn't do what the other cool kids are doing. So she's like not likely to want to go on this ski trip. And that's exactly why Laura Jean brings this up as the caveat. Fast forward and we see that Christine and Laura Jean are chilling at her house, and Christine's like, why is Peter blowing up my phone to go on some ski trip? And Laura Jean basically tells her everything. And by the way, Christine doesn't know that they're fake dating. She thinks that they're really dating. And so she's confused because she's like, if you let Peter go on the ski trip alone, you know that Jen is going to try to make a move on him. And Laura Jean's like, yeah, and I'm tired of fighting with her. Like, I don't care. Like, if she wants him so bad, she can have him. Actually, in the background, Dr. Covey, or Laura Jean's dad, is sitting on the staircase and he's like, I'm sorry, I really wasn't trying to eavesdrop. But he admits to Laura Jean, like, I haven't seen you this happy. You've been going out to parties. You've been making new friends. You seem so good. I really like, what the positive things that Peter has brought into your life. And so both Christine and Laura Jean look at each other and they're like, that was actually really sweet. And so Laura Jean does end up going on the ski trip, as does Christine. But even though she's going on the ski trip, she's still like keeping Peter at arm's length. Like I said, she has been kind of starting to develop feelings for Peter, and she really doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag on that one. So she's putting a guard up around her heart. So when they get on the bus, Peter has a seat open for her and he's like looking at her as she's walking in, but she ends up sitting next to Christine all the way up to the ski lodge. And therefore Peter ends up sitting next to Jen. Once they get to the ski lodge, Christine is talking about what mountains they're gonna do when Laura Jean's like, oh no, I did not come on this trip to ski any mountains. I don't even know how to ski. I am here to read some books in front of this fireplace. And so Lucas is also on this trip, but Lucas also has no plans of skiing. And so they kind of hole up in their room and hang out doing fun face masks. So she ends up opening up to Lucas, knowing what's been going on between her and Peter. And Lucas actually has kind of a different perspective on the whole situation. Says that Peter looks at Laura Jean like she's a sexy little Rubik's Cube, and he hasn't figured her out yet, but he's having a lot of fun trying. Really like that line. I thought it was very sweet. And this kind of like makes Laura Jean start re-looking at the situation to try to understand, like, maybe I'm not seeing it from the right perspective. And so with all of this knowledge from Lucas, she decides to go find Peter, and he's downstairs in the hot tub. Laura Jean goes out to Peter and they kind of have a conversation. She says that she's sorry for not sitting next to him on the bus. He had asked Kitty where to get those yogurt smoothie things that she likes so much. And she's like, but they're all the way across town at the Korean supermarket. And he's like, yeah, so if I drove all the way across town to get your favorite yogurt, what does that mean? And she's like, you really like yogurt? Classic, like, dumb line where you're like, you know, he didn't drive all that way to just pick up some fucking yogurt for himself. Like, he's trying to do a solid for you, lady. Like, pay attention. So once Laura Jean kind of puts two and two together and Peter's looking at her with, you know, those eyes, and it's pretty clear that, I think it's pretty clear without Peter having to say much, that he's also conflicted because yes, he started this whole situation, his idea, because he wanted to get Jen back, but the more that he gets to know Laura Jean, the more he's starting to like her. So this scene kind of confirms to Laura Jean that, like, it's not all one-sided, like, he's starting to feel something too. So she ends up getting in the hot tub with them and they end up making out. Get out of the hot tub, they walk back to their rooms and they kiss one more time at the top of the staircase and then they both leave. And so we see Laura Jean just kind of in bliss after this. We see them the next day on the ride home on the bus that they sit next to each other. But unfortunately, the second that Laura Jean gets off the bus, she's confronted by Jen. So obviously Jen is trying to insinuate that her and Peter were doing stuff. Laura Jean's pissed because of course this is her worst nightmare. This is exactly what she was avoiding. This is exactly why she didn't want to make her feelings known. She didn't want to get hurt. And so now she is. And so she cuts Peter off. She's like, that's it. Like, I'm done. Like, you went to Jen right after all of that was said. Like, I told you, like, it's been very clear that Laura Jean has a problem with commitment. So like, to do all of this, like, really just doesn't help his case at all. So of course, right as everything is kind of starting to fall apart for Laura Jean, Margot comes home early. So Margot's home for the holidays and she had actually finished her exams early, so she was able to come home and surprise everyone, which is great and not great at the same time because, like I said, Laura Jean has been keeping Margot in the dark about everything that's been going on, and allegedly by this point she's been dating Peter for like 4 months. So right as the girls are starting to prepare like goodies for the evening, you know, it's like Christmas time, so they're baking or whatever. There's a knock at the door and it's Peter and he's like, I really need to talk to you. She reveals to Peter that Jen talked to her and that she knows that he went to Jen's room after leaving her that night. And Peter explains how, yes, he did go to Jen's room, but it was to completely and officially end things forever. Like, he was walking away from her. He was like, I want to be with you. Like, I don't have any reserved feelings for Jen anymore. Like, it's not about her anymore. And Laura Jean is taking this all in, but she's like, again, still not ready to like make that leap, take that risk. And while they're trying to have this conversation on the porch, here comes in Josh, who like only shows up when Peter's at Laura Jean's house. I don't like Josh. I don't think I've mentioned that up until this point, but I don't really enjoy his character because I don't know what exactly he wanted. Like, he wants to talk to Laura Jean, obviously, because she had this giant like love confessional letter. And I understand like being curious about it and wanting to like, I don't know, nip it in the bud or whatever, but Josh keeps approaching Laura Jean like he also does have feelings for Laura Jean, but like now it's super weird. You dated her older sister. Like, you should be shutting this down. So anyway, Josh comes over and he's trying to talk to Laura Jean, and somehow it comes out about like everything that's going on, about the letters and how she's dating Krasinski, but Krasinski sucks. Little do you know, Margot's been eavesdropping the whole time. So she shows up outside and she's like, what is happening? And she's like, Laura Jean, you're in love with Josh? And so like, this is all exploding. Laura Jean runs back into the house and runs into her room. Peter ends up leaving and Josh also goes back home. Laura Jean and Margot aren't speaking because obviously Margot's really upset. She's confused because she's like, A, I didn't know you were dating Peter Krasinski. Why wouldn't you tell me that? And B, you have feelings for Josh? Like, what's up? Just when you thought like it couldn't get any worse than this. Remember when Peter and Laura Jean were making out in the hot tub? Well, apparently someone was videotaping this and then posted it on Instagram as like some kind of alleged leaked sex tape. So Laura Jean ends up groveling to Margot and she's like, I know you hate me right now, but I kind of need your help. So Margot swoops in, saves the day, because that's what older sisters always do. She's able to get this like basically scrubbed from the internet. And afterwards she and Laura Jean finally have a conversation together about what happened. Laura Jean mentions how like she had written these letters. It's like part of her process, how she lets her feelings out. And Josh was just like, this was an old letter. She doesn't have those feelings anymore. She just like, he just was never supposed to see that. And she was really sorry, but she didn't know, she couldn't lie to Margot about the whole fake dating thing. And so she just couldn't come clean to her about what was going on. And Margot accepts this. She's like so easygoing. She's like, okay, that like makes sense. Like I get it. I just don't ever want us to go this long without like being honest with each other, and like let's never lie to each other again. We'll see that Kitty has been eavesdropping for this entire conversation. Kitty feels like this is probably the time to do it, and she finally reveals to Laura Jean that she was the one to send out all the letters. Of course, Laura Jean is super pissed at her, but Margot is able to get in between them and kind of be like, you know, what Kitty did was fucked up, but it came from a good place, so like we're not gonna kill her. Back at school after the winter break, I assume, even though the video has been scrubbed, it already made the rounds and lots of people already have seen it, as well as speculate that Laura Jean is the girl in the video. Yeah, I think it's the middle of a crowded hallway because you have to have at least one like big announcement in the middle of a hallway in every high school movie to have ever existed ever. But Peter shouts that like this never exists, this never happened, anyone spreading this lie like can come see him. And he basically puts it on blast that like Laura Jean, don't say this shit about Laura Jean, none of this shit's true. We also see that Laura Jean confronts Jen in the bathroom at school because she thinks that Jen is the one that released this video. And I don't know if it's revealed that Jen actually leaked it or not. I don't think she ever cops to it. But what Jen does reveal is that she's always been jealous of Laura Jean due to the fact that she was the first one to kiss Peter. But Laura Jean is like, that was spin the bottle, that was 7th grade and it was tongueless, so like who cares? But this opens up Laura Jean's mind to realize like she's not as invisible as she was thinking she was, and that she actually, you know, just because you seem like no one in your own story doesn't mean you're not somebody to somebody else in their story. So it kind of redirects her perspective. So Josh comes over to Laura Jean's house and they finally have the conversation. Laura Jean mentions how that letter was written before, you know, him and Margot were together, and that after him and Margot got together, you know, everything changed. Not to mention, due to recent events, she realized that she never was actually in love with Josh. She just more loved the idea of Josh. And Josh is like, okay, you know, I totally get that. That's totally understandable. He's like, why couldn't you have told me this before? And she tells him, like, honestly, I didn't know that wasn't love. Like, I didn't know what those feelings were until Peter. But even though she realizes that she does in fact have feelings for Peter, she's still not ready to tell him the feelings. And even Josh is further encouraging her, like, you can't just like live in a shell, you can't just like stay in your bedroom writing letters. And this is when Kitty appears, and she's been eavesdropping in the background this whole time, as little sisters do. And she comes up to Laura Jean and she says, here, I think you're ready for these. And basically what Kitty's been doing is that she saw that Peter was giving Laura Jean love notes, and she was just like throwing them away, I guess, assuming that they were blank. And Kitty held on to all of them and put them in a little box for Laura Jean. So Laura Jean opens the fabric box, she starts going through the love notes, and she realizes that like he really was writing notes to her, not just like as a cover. And once Laura Jean sees these, it kind of like cracks something in her, like it snaps something in her brain, and she's like, okay. So as I said before, Laura Jean is not the best driver, but she gets some courage, she gets behind the wheel and she drives over to the school. Then she gets out and she walks across the lacrosse field to find Peter. But I love this moment where she gets there and she's like, I drove here. And he's like, cool. And she like turns to leave and he's like, wait, like that's what you came here to say? But she actually came there with a letter of her own in hand and admits to him that she really likes him, and not in a fake way. And it's cute because he exposes himself back to her and he's like, I'm falling in love with you. And that is the first installment of To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Now, this is a series. The rest of the movies really don't do any more fake dating, from my understanding. Not that there aren't other cliches that we tackle. I'm debating right now if I'm going to do the rest of the movies as part of my What Did We Learn series, or if maybe I'm just gonna read the books instead and then do a whole like book versus movie thing instead. I don't know. I haven't really decided. So let me know in the comments what you guys think. But before we get out of here, we gotta talk a little bit more about the movie and of course, what did we learn? So the comedy or joke style of this movie is definitely heavily relied on classic teen rom-com tropes. You know, we've got the fake dating thing, we've got the jock versus nerd, we've got, or jock versus bookworm, we've got the type A girl breaking out of her shell. All different kinds of tropes kind of molded into one. I do think that the movie does manage to make some of them their own, not succeeding 100% of the time, however. But I think that this movie is more wish fulfillment than it is realistic. So I'm gonna kind of let that go. The romance and chemistry. So I think that the two main leads do have a good amount of chemistry. They had great timing between each other, like the scenes of just the two of them talking. They ping-ponged off of each other really nicely. I like the story of the first movie, but I like the acting in the second movie better. And the third one, I think I need to watch that movie again because I only watched it once and I didn't like the ending, and so I kind of didn't fully like take in the whole movie because I was just so frustrated by the ending. I need to watch the third one again to really give my 2 cents. And I also think that the romance and chemistry aspect was actually really age appropriate, which I think is rare in a teen rom-com. Maybe that's just because I've been watching too much Euphoria, but for once I didn't feel like the level of like kissing or making out or like touching, none of it felt like gross or icky to me. It felt totally like regular ass high school kids being regular ass high school kids. And I, for one, really appreciated that we could focus on them actually having some kind of personal connection and like actual friendship, and not just focus on the fact that like, he's hot, she's hot. So now it's time for the grand finale. What did we learn? Fake dating leads to real dating because movies. Sister bonds are like no other. The boy who travels across town for food for you, he's a keeper. And lastly, don't put addresses on anything you don't actually want to get sent in the mail. Before I get out of here, here's some just like final fun facts about the movie that I thought were interesting. The original book and the author are both Asian American, and it was extremely important for the author Jenny Han to have an Asian American girl play the lead character of Laura Jean. This is important because it's so rarely done. We so rarely see Asian Americans in lead roles. Not to mention, that's what the character is based off of. Many studios wanted to pick up this movie and didn't, and she wouldn't sell to them because they wanted to recast for a white Caucasian woman to play the lead role instead. I don't know how much of a cultural impact it's made, but I do think it did something, and I'm personally so glad that this movie exists. But that's gonna be it for me and this movie today. I'm so glad to be back in our regular form. I'm so glad to talk about more movies and TV shows. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to do me a solid and drop a like on it. It really lets me know that you guys are enjoying the content. As always, if you enjoy my opinion on movies and TV shows, hit that subscribe button and the bell next to it so you can be notified every time I upload. I know I teased that I was going to be doing a NSYNC music tier list. Don't worry, that's still on the way. I just wanted to film this instead because of the news of the strike ending. I was just super pumped, and so this is the first thing I wanted to do. But that's gonna be all. I will catch you guys in the next one. See you guys later. Bye.